And I have a guy that does interviews. Used to have his name on his clipboard and used to put it up to the guy like this, to the interview. And Tom Hanks killed him on that once. Oh. Yeah, he said, "Well, do you know Don?" And he never even answered the question. Just said his name 45 times. The guy's kind of egotistical, but. And we're going strong, 91 albums, and still going very strong. What sets Astoria, Portrait of an Artist, apart from the other albums?
Well, it's the first album that is kind of a reflection on looking back at my life and just reflecting on it and getting impressions of, I mean, we're all victims of circumstances, and you know, you look back at your life and then realize I'm just old enough now, 63, to just kind of look back calmly and just say, well, this is what has happened to me 3/4 of my life right now. And it's very nice. I mean, it's a good feeling, actually.
How much of an emotional experience was it for you recording this album?
Well, very emotional, because as I say, it pertained to my own, you know, it's what's the famous Shakespearean line, you know thyself. Mm-hmm. So it was almost like self psychology, you know, kind of checking out why I did this and why I did that, and reflecting on it.
Are you are you happy what you've come away with, psychoanalyzing it?
Yeah, I mean, actually, you know, they say if you're ever troubled, the nice thing to do is write down about it, write about it, and then when you look at it, it's not that big a problem. And looking back, I ended up saying, hey, I'm a pretty nice guy, so it works out. It works out.
Well, you've certainly have portrayed that persona and that image to millions of us over the years, and I mean, you know, people see you in the street, they say, oh, he seems like an average guy, a nice guy, somebody you want to know, you know?
Well, that's what I try to communicate, because I mean, we're all here, and I really don't like I don't know who came up with the word superstar, but I think it's a false word. I'd rather just be. I mean, what's nicer than being a headliner? That's big time, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, superstar, I don't even understand the phrase. Certain words have creeped into the show business language that's pretty strange. I mean, contemporary, for instance, like contemporary, adult contemporary. Years ago, contemporary, the word contemporary only pertained to Stravinsky or Prokofiev or Shostakovich. You know, now all of a sudden it's the top 40. You know, and image is a strange word for me. Someone's image. It sounds like we're all ghosts. I don't understand. Certain words are funny.
Well, a word that is fairly synonymous with your work is romantic, and the sound. Is that on purpose? Are you really a romantic at heart, Tony?
Yes, but I think a lot of musicians tell me that I'm, and they don't. A lot of musicians dislike singers because they feel it took work away from them years ago, and then it kind of stayed on. But a lot of musicians say that I'm a musician, and musicians are romantic. Real good musicians. I mean, they think that way. They think with feeling, and they kind of understand people. They study people and try and give impressions of people. I think most people are really romantic. I think a lot of critics aren't romantic. They think that there's something weak about someone who's romantic. It goes in and out of fashion. Every once in a while, the intellects will come along and say, well, we're thinking physics now, we're not thinking romantically. But it always comes back stronger than ever. The public loves it, and so do good musicians.
And speaking of romance, how do women react to you when they see you at a show, or they see you at the supermarket or in the street? What type of reaction do you get?
Well, you know, funny enough, I've had very good training, because I didn't really go to school a lot for performing, but I really, out of necessity, I just went to work in Vaudeville. At the end of Vaudeville, I played 7 shows a day at the Paramount, or across the country, like the State Theater in Cleveland and places like that, the Fox Theaters, and it's when the big bands were just dying out, and the singers became in focus, because it was more economical for the owners of the theaters to go with whatever was popular. And I learned to play to the whole audience. I didn't play to women. I played to any demographic group. I play to the whole family. Because if you're doing 7 shows a day, you start out in the morning with the young teeny boppers, in the afternoon the grandparents, because they're kind of retired, and in the evening young lovers and people that are married. So by the end of the day, you play to every demographic group, and you really had to communicate to each group. And I learned to just play to the whole family, and I like it that way too.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I got lucky with a lady.
Yeah, once in a while.
There it is.
It's a small list, right?
Well, whatever, you know. But I'm just saying, you ask me a question, I'm giving you an answer.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, the way they react to you when you are out in public, do you get a kick out of that? The way people?
Well, most people are very nice to me. I don't have bodyguards. You know, I save all that for the stage. I kind of like, you know, acting childish and having fun on stage. But when I come off, I'd like to just be a person and have a private life.
Well, can you explain to us the progression or the story behind the story on I Left My Heart in San Francisco from 1962, how that came about, how you came about recording it?
Sure. Well, you know, I have a magnificent colleague. Everybody should be blessed with a guy who works with someone else, like Ralph Sharon. He's my music director, and he's on and off, he's been with me for 25 years. And he's found all my songs for me through the years. And we were in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and it was the first time I was ever playing San Francisco. And he's very clever about doing something that really works wherever we're going. And he suggested a song that was written by George Corey, and it was a friend of Ralph's, and he used to write songs for Billie Holiday. And he said, you know, there's a song, we're going to the Fairmont for the first time in San Francisco. He said, why don't you try this song? It's about San Francisco. I said, that sounds logical. And when we recorded it, there was a bartender that when we were rehearsing it in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and he said, if you record that song, I'm going to buy that record. And that was pretty encouraging, just from a lone bartender. But then, the minute we got to San Francisco at rehearsal, it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, the reaction, all the salesmen said, you got to record this song. And we thought it would be a local hit in San Francisco, not realizing it would become my signature song through the years, throughout the world.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about 28 years later, and it's still going very strong.
It is, you know.
You hear it all over the place. And,
I'm booked up till well into the middle of next year.
Really? Really?
In very nice places. I'm very fortunate. I've been singing 40 years now.
40 years this year, an anniversary. I mean, it still sounds like 40 years ago. Your voice sounds really good.
Like Johnny Carson says, here's to longevity.
Really, really. Take a swig of that.
Okay, thanks, Earl.
If you could put your finger on the personal and professional impact that particular popular song has had on your career, how would you describe it?
Well, funny enough, it's become my favorite song, and I'll tell you why. It has afforded me a passport to the whole world. I'm commissioned all over the world. At the end of this month, I go to Britain. Then we're going to go to Spain. I'm playing Japan in August. It's allowed me a great education and a great adventure. You know, many people love to travel and visit new countries and everything. And to go to a place for the first time in your life, like Belgium, and then to be treated so warmly in Sweden, places like that, where incongruous places where you would say that I didn't know they even knew me, and everybody, and then to go to Japan where they have, like we're very famous for discos in the United States, but over there they have clubs where the Japanese get up on stage with their fellow businessmen when they're out for a night of fun, and they have a recorded background music, and they all sing popular songs, and they try to sing in English to learn the English language. They're very intelligent, and a very simple song because it's a ballad, and the most famous song for them to sing in these cabarets where they get up and perform is I Left My Heart in San Francisco, and they always say that the minute that I get to Japan, they mention that to me.
Wonderful. Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It really is.
is.
It's fun.
How about your country connection of years ago when doing A Cold, Cold Heart? And I know you heard from people about that.
Well, Rosemary Clooney and I had, she had half as much, and Mitch Miller gave us these songs. And he was pretty clever at realizing that this was a vein that hadn't been tapped yet. That every record that Hank Williams ever made sold an automatic 350,000 records in the Bible Belt. But he sensed that the whole world would like it, that there was a huge audience. And in those days, we didn't dream that if a country act that was famous would go to Madison Square Garden, that would be packed out. They didn't believe that the North would go for that. But so Rosie had half as much, which sold 1 million records, and I had Cold, Cold Heart. And they were both Hank Williams songs, and they called it in those days, we citified the country music, because they had never put strings behind a country song. Ray Price was the first one down in Nashville to do that. And he was way ahead of time and got a lot of criticism by his peers down there in Nashville. They said, what are you're ruining the songs with this, instead of keeping it simple with a small group. They didn't like drums. They didn't like anything Northern. And but then Mitch was smart enough to put Percy Faith behind us. And a huge orchestra of strings, and in 2 weeks it sold 2 million records. In those days, that was a lot of records.
Yeah,
it's not like today with 20 million records, but in those days it was a phenomenon.
Really? I mean, it's probably like 40 million today when you think
it
about
would be
it.
like
Really?
It would be like
there.
20 million records today. Yes.
What was the reaction you got from Hank?
Well, Hank kidded around with me. I found out just recently, the other day, that Hank really adored the fact that I recorded the song and he liked it. But he had that Southern sense of humor, that dry sense of humor. And he called me up and he said, "Tony," he said, "this is Hank Williams." I said, "You're kidding?" He said, "No." He said, "What's the idea of ruining my song?"
right.
So it was fun. He was grateful for all the royalties.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
But he's like Billie Holiday. It was funny to compare Hank Williams to Billie Holiday, but those two artists had a kind of a destiny about them. Hank really, like I did my album Astoria, but Hank, all of his repertoire was all really about his own life. It's a very interesting catalog of music to listen to Hank Williams songs, because it's all about his philosophy in life and what happened to him in his life. And he was well, I consider him a recording genius. Just like Billie Holiday, if you listen to her catalog, you could almost hear her whole life.
Yeah, very personal.
The songs all was something that pertained to something that she actually lived.
Which is, I think, is going on. It's going on a limb almost for a performer. I mean, you're opening yourself up to.
Well, that's it.
All your emotions.
But it's honest, and it's the hardest thing to be yourself, pure, just naked out there and just being yourself and showing everybody this is where I'm really at.
Yeah.
And that's greatness. It's very rare. I think they're the only two artists that I know that really just put themselves out there on the limb.
Here's what you see is what you get. And
yes,
where it
exactly.
is. Yeah.
It was the truth.
How have you, Tony, changed over the years personally and vocally?
Well, I keep studying. I've learned a lot more discipline as I got older. And I was on the road for 2.5 years with Lena Horne. And she's, really demands a lot of discipline. She's very consistent. And I learned from her and from other great artists I was fortunate to perform with. Robert Farnon, who's the great orchestrator in London with the BBC, who is the best writer of music, of light entertainment music. And then, of course, Duke Ellington and Woody Herman and Count Basie and people like that. And they had been there,
Yeah.
They had been where I was trying to get. And they were nice enough to give little bits of advice along the way. And I learned a lot from them.
And were there any certain performers that you enjoyed working with more than others?
Well, Count Basie was my dream world. I just adored Basie. He had a great sense of humor. He said things so simple. He'd just say something and it was deep. He was a wonderful artist and a wonderful man.
So he's probably one of your favorites over the years.
He was whenever you know, my adrenaline would go up when I heard I was going to work with Count Basie. I was ready for it.
Yeah, that must have been quite a show.
Oh, it was fun. Oh, it would explode, I tell you. He had a magnetism. He'd just look at the audience and not play a note, and you'd hear the whole audience, wherever he looked, swoon, to make a big wow, you know.
Yeah.
He wasn't even playing a note. He had a tremendous aura.
I wonder how many performers of today have that type of control.
Well, don't forget, George Burns told me that that was the only regretful thing about the young, very good-looking, talented performers today, that they don't have the circuit to go from town to town and get lousy before they get good.
Right.
And, you know, that's almost regretful, because they look wonderful on TV, and they look like, wow, we got to go see these guys. And then it's always a little, you know, unsatisfying when you a little letdown when you finally leave. But there are good performers. There, you know, Stevie Wonder and Billy Joel and Whitney Houston. There's some good performers around today, and they're going to survive. They'll survive well.
What is the best compliment you can hear about your work?
Well, that I was a good singer, or I am a good singer. I mean, that's all I've ever wanted to do, and I don't know, I have no ambition about it. I just always wanted to be a very good singer.
Well, I don't think you have to worry about that.
Well, thank you.
You know, I mean,
Thanks,
me and every millions of people watching, I'm sure that they agree, and we'll pick up the album, and hopefully it's all across the country, right? People can get it.
Oh, yes.
In every store.
Yes, it's on Columbia Records.
Over the past 40 years, this might be tough, but what are some of your fondest memories of show business and your career?
Well, there are so many good thoughts. The best one was Carnegie Hall. It was the first concert I ever gave in my life, and I started right at the top. It was Carnegie Hall, and that was a great moment in 1962. And then the 100th anniversary of Royal Albert Hall in London with the London Philharmonic, and making an album with just the piano with Bill Evans, who was a master piano player. And great person. Oh, there's so many nice people I've met, and you know, that I could go on and on. Believe me, they all had something. Duke Ellington was a master, and really bigger than a lot of us realize yet. But he was America's first classical musician. We'll find that about 100 years from now.
Yeah, right.
You know, when they all realize what he did.
And I know something else very near and dear to you is art and your painting. How would you describe your love for art?
Well, it's my sanity, you know, because what it did, I started, instead of trying to top anybody, I just started painting. I ended up arriving at painting from nature. And the more I do that, the more I learn, you know, from watching nature. You know, anything that's alive, I'm fascinated with. And the more you study it, the more you realize that you'll never get it. You know, you'll never really finish your work. But it keeps you humble, and yet it makes you very knowledgeable. And that's the road I kind of like. I like to walk toward wisdom.
And what has it done for you emotionally, your painting, and spiritually?
Well, it just makes you a perpetual student. You never finish learning. It takes a lifetime to learn how to paint well. So you never really, you're on this, it's not arriving, it's the adventure of just searching. And that keeps you, you know, very youthful. It keeps you wide awake about life. Makes you realize how much you have to learn. And I love it. I just love doing it. It's very meditative. Makes you concentrate on one thing.
You know,
It gives you a peace of mind.